My name is Kalen Vance, and for a full decade, my entire existence was a beautifully ordered universe of syntax and logic, a realm where every problem had an elegant solution waiting to be discovered in the silent language of code. I was the architect and lifelong guardian of Aegis, a cybersecurity protocol that was so much more than mere software. It was a dynamic, cognitive digital entity, a sentinel that didn't just defend static walls, but learned, adapted, and evolved against threats in real time, an immune system for the global digital body. It was my life's work, my legacy, my intellectual child, and my partner, Julian Croft, was its dazzling, public-facing oracle. He was the silver-tongued visionary who could translate my complex, arcane binary dreams into a compelling narrative that made venture capitalists weep with joy and Fortune 500 boards willingly open their vast treasuries. I was the ghost in the machine, perfectly content in the humming, cool darkness of the server room, while he was the brilliant, warm spotlight on the world stage, bathing in the adulation. Our partnership became the stuff of Silicon Valley legend, a textbook-perfect fusion of reclusive genius and charismatic leadership that propelled us to stratospheric heights. Then came the event the tech media sensationally dubbed the Aegis Cataclysm. It was a devastating, seemingly impossible cyber assault that breached our central server fortress, a digital citadel I had mathematically guaranteed was utterly impenetrable. The fallout was instantaneous, public, and brutally merciless. Terabytes of sensitive client data, financial records, proprietary intellectual property, state secrets, bled out onto the shadowy forums of the dark web. Our stock price entered nosedive, a catastrophic plummet that wiped out billions in market capitalization in a single, horrifying afternoon. The entire world watched, transfixed, as the digital titan I had painstakingly built was publicly humiliated, dismantled, and branded a catastrophic failure. Julian was the picture of frantic, public-facing grief and contrition, but I immediately retreated into the one sanctuary I had always trusted, the cold, hard truth of the code. While he managed the relentless media firestorm with practiced ease, I initiated my own deep, forensic autopsy on the digital corpse of my creation. For days, I lived on coffee and obsession, tracking the sophisticated attack vector through the scorched earth of my own code. The trail was a masterclass in deception, meticulously crafted to be almost flawless. It was too clean, too surgically precise, leaving a forensically perfect, yet subtly artificial signature that conveniently pointed toward a generic, untraceable Eastern European threat actor. But buried beneath that clever smokescreen, hidden under layers of misdirection, I found the real ghost in the machine, the ultimate root-level access key. The one that had so elegantly unlocked the backdoor carried a digital fingerprint I knew more intimately than my own. It was Julian's own personal master key, the one I had personally, foolishly entrusted to him as a sign of ultimate partnership. The truth was a sucker punch that hollowed out my soul. He hadn't just been negligent. He had been the clandestine architect of our entire downfall. He had coldly sold a permanent backdoor to our system to a rival conglomerate, deliberately staging a catastrophic failure to devalue our company, planning to force me out in the ensuing chaos and sell the crippled, vulnerable remains for a personal fortune that would cement him as a billionaire kingmaker. I confronted him in his pristine, minimalist penthouse office, the sparkling city lights sprawling below us like a field of fallen stars. I laid the irrefutable evidence on his desk, the damning server logs, the unique key signatures, the intricate money trail leading straight to his labyrinth of offshore accounts. He didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. He just looked at me with a weary, almost pitying smile. Kalen, he sighed, as if explaining basic arithmetic to a particularly slow child. Your code was a genuine masterpiece, a work of art, but you were always the artist, far too pure and naive for the brutal realities of this world. This isn't personal. It's just the final, logical evolution of our business model. You built a beautiful, perfect sandcastle. I'm merely selling the very beach it sits on. He had already used the manufactured crisis and his controlling shares to unceremoniously vote me off the board. I was digitally excommunicated, my access keys instantly revoked, my life's work publicly branded a catastrophic failure. my professional name permanently synonymous with hubris and incompetence. The betrayal was a cold, systemic virus that corrupted and poisoned every happy memory we had ever built together. But as I stood numb on the rain-slicked sidewalk outside the shimmering skyscraper that was once my sanctuary, a new kind of code began compiling in the deepest recesses of my mind. A code that was cold, clean, precise, and utterly ruthless. He saw himself as a master of the corporate game, a grand strategist, but he had made one fatal, unforgivable miscalculation. He had betrayed the one man who had written the very fundamental rules of the digital universe he now sought to plunder. My revenge, I decided, would not be a loud, messy, denial-of-service attack born of rage. It would be a silent, patient, and completely undetectable zero-day exploit, woven into the very fabric of his new empire. I would become a phantom limb on the body of a stolen corporation, and I would make it spasm and convulse until it tore itself apart from the inside out. My disappearance from the world was total and absolute. I became a ghost in the real world to reincarnate as a potential god in the digital one. I used the last of my carefully guarded personal savings, funds Julian had never known about or could ever touch, to rent a barren, soundproofed, and anonymous room in the bowels of a nondescript data center. It was a concrete cube, a digital monk cell, fed by a hijacked, high-bandwidth fiber optic line. My new monastery where I would meditate solely on the divine scripture of revenge. My grand plan was a beautiful paradox. To successfully infiltrate the very fortress I had built, I needed to become a legend even more compelling and mysterious than my own creation. Thus, the persona of Cypher was painstakingly born. I spent 6 relentless months meticulously crafting this identity, building the reputation of a gray-hat hacker of mythical, almost supernatural prowess. A digital messiah who solved impossible problems for the sheer intellectual challenge, never for the money. I anonymously patched critical, zero-day vulnerabilities in the core systems of global banking networks, leaving behind only a cryptic, tantalizing signature as my calling card. I solved legendary cryptographic puzzles on the darkest, most secretive forums, puzzles that had stumped the entire information security community and even the NSA, thereby establishing an unassailable reputation for preternatural skill and untraceable movement. I was casting a perfectly baited hook into the deepest, most dangerous waters of a cyber underworld, and I knew with absolute certainty that the biggest, most ambitious shark in the ocean would eventually, inevitably bite. Julian's ambition was a blinding, addictive drug, and his need to truly resurrect Aegis and secure the monumental Omnibank contract, the largest single cybersecurity deal in human history, would demand a miracle. He would need to hire a ghost to prove to the world that his system was no longer haunted. The encrypted, unsolicited message from his newly hired, desperate chief technology officer was a thing of beauty, dripping with palpable panic and a blank check offer for Cypher's exclusive, no questions asked services to audit and fortify the new, resilient version of my own life's work. The profound, layered irony was a complex, bitter wine I had learned to drink deeply from and even appreciate. I, Kalen Vance, was now being hired as a highly paid mercenary to fix the very system I had built, under an alias I had invented, for the very man who had systematically annihilated my life. I accepted the offer without hesitation. Working through a complex, Russian doll-like nesting of proxy servers and military-grade encrypted tunnels, I was gradually granted layered, escalating access to the new Aegis framework. It was a grotesque, horrifying perversion of my once beautiful architecture, a bloated, clumsy patchwork of corporate-mandated efficiency, measures, and panicked, post-breach security fixes that had completely stripped out its elegant, adaptive, living soul. I played my part with Oscar-worthy precision and patience. I identified and patched every superficial vulnerability, delivered flawlessly written, insightful reports, and made their entire internal security team look like incompetent amateurs. With each demonstrated success, their trust in Cypher deepened, and my administrative privileges expanded exponentially, inching me closer and closer to the sacred, inner core of the system. And then, in the dead of night, during a scheduled maintenance window, I planted my masterpiece, my magnum opus of vengeance, deep within the core kernel, in a dormant subroutine that looked identical to a standard, benign checksum verification, I secretly coded the firewall protocol. It was a logic bomb of such sublime, malicious beauty that it nearly brought a tear to my eye. It was designed to be patient, to be silent, to be utterly undetectable. On a predetermined date, triggered automatically by the public news wire announcement of the finalized Omnibank deal, it would awaken from its digital slumber. Its core function was twofold: a digital hydra with two devastating heads. First, it would become a leech of microscopic perfection. It would silently, seamlessly divert a minuscule, mathematically untraceable fraction of a single cent from every one of the billions of financial transactions Aegis processed daily, channeling this endless, invisible river of wealth into a fractal, self-sustaining network of encrypted, anonymous cryptocurrency wallets. It was the perfect crime, akin to stealing a single grain of sand from an infinite desert, every second of every day. Second, and far more devastating in the long term, the protocol would simultaneously activate a hidden, forensic-level audit daemon. This daemon would continuously, silently scan the entire Aegis ecosystem, not for bugs or errors, but for sin. It was programmed specifically to find, document, timestamp, and irrevocably log every single illicit backdoor, every unauthorized access, every clandestine data siphon, and every corrupt financial transaction Julian initiated, compiling it all into an unassailable, real-time, and digitally signed ledger of his entire criminal enterprise. I wasn't just going to bankrupt him slowly and painfully. I was going to force him to become the author of his own detailed, undeniable confession, and I would be the one to hold the only copy. The day of the historic Omnibank signing was a globally televised media spectacle, an event of unparalleled corporate theater. Julian stood on a stage brighter than the sun, bathed in the blinding adulation of the world's press, the triumphant phoenix who had heroically risen from the ashes of my professionally engineered ruin. I watched the live stream on a massive wall of monitors, the cool blue glow the only illumination in my silent, concrete cell, my heart a steady, calm metronome in the stillness. The very second his gold-plated stylus touched the surface of the digital contract pad, a silent, irrevocable switch was thrown deep within the heart of the Aegis source code. My firewall protocol stirred to life, a sleeping dragon awakening in its core. There was no fanfare, no system alert, no error message. It simply began its work. On my custom-built dashboard, I watched in real time as the first streams of microtransactions initiated, a silent, relentless, and beautiful torrent of digital pennies, beginning their eternal flow from the very heart of his empire into my waiting, anonymous, and limitless vaults. It was a silent, symphonic masterpiece of vengeance, playing out in pure data. For 2 full weeks, the world remained completely convinced of Julian Croft's brilliant redemption arc. He was universally hailed as a business visionary, a true titan of industry. Then the first, almost imperceptible tremor occurred, a faint ripple in the digital fabric of his world. Omnibank's own quantum-level fraud detection artificial intelligence, a system an entire order of magnitude more sophisticated than Aegis, flagged a statistical ghost in the machine, a financial anomaly so infinitesimally small it was almost theoretical, a consistent, microscopic bleed in the financial data stream that defied all natural laws of probability and random fluctuation. They didn't send in human auditors. They unleashed a full-scale, digital SEAL team. Their world-class forensic experts tore into the Aegis system with tools and techniques I could only dream of. And they didn't just find my clever, hidden leech. They ripped open the secret demon and discovered the true treasure trove hidden within, the ledger. It was a perfect, real-time, and horrifyingly comprehensive diary of Julian's crimes, more detailed and damning than any federal prosecutor could ever hope to obtain through a conventional investigation. It documented everything, from the very first stages of the initial, staged breach to the ongoing, secret backdoor deals he was still making with other competitors, all impeccably time-stamped and cryptographically verified. The news didn't just break, it erupted like a digital supernova, blinding and consuming everything in its path. Headlines globally shifted instantaneously from Julian Croft's triumphant return to the Aegis deception, a criminal enterprise, and the biggest fraud in tech history. The landmark Omnibank deal was instantly vaporized, dissolved into nothingness. His terrified investors fled in a blind, stampeding panic, The SEC and FBI launched simultaneous, aggressive criminal investigations, and his company's stock value evaporated into the electronic ether, wiping out his entire personal fortune in a matter of hours. He was left not just financially bankrupt and destitute, but publicly disgraced and facing decades in a maximum security federal prison. I received one final, desperate, encrypted email from him, sent to my dead, defunct corporate account. The subject line was a solitary, screaming please. The message itself was a rambling, paranoid screed, begging Cypher for mercy, offering him unlimited wealth and power, desperately asking if this was all an elaborate plot by a rival corporation. I felt nothing but a profound, empty silence, the quiet after a long and brutal storm. I replied from my secure, personal account, a single, clean, devastating line of text. It was just business, Julian. Then, with a final keystroke, I initiated the last, most elegant subroutine of my grand protocol. I used the entire colossal fortune I had siphoned, every single stolen digital penny, to create an automated, anonymous, and transparent fund that actively sought out and fully reimbursed every single client, every individual, and every small business who had lost money in his initial, staged breach, repaying them all with substantial, life-changing interest. The firewall protocol had not been merely an instrument of destruction. It had been a self-correcting circuit of cosmic justice, routing corruption into restitution and transforming personal vengeance into societal redemption. He had taken my company, my reputation, and my faith in humanity, but I had taken his future, his legacy, and his freedom. I had used the pure, unassailable logic of my code to cleanse the world of his pathological greed, and in the stark, silent aftermath, I found a peace that was more valuable than any empire. I had not just won. I had, in my own way, rebalanced the universal scales. Did Kalen's creation of the firewall protocol cross an ethical line, making him as morally corrupt as Julian? Or was this a just and necessary form of digital vigilante justice in a system that had failed him? If you possessed the skills to execute such a flawless, untraceable revenge, would your conscience allow you to proceed? Share your verdict, your moral reasoning, and your own stories of fighting back against an unscrupulous and powerful system in the comments below.